Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome to So Much to Talk About. My name is Nabaté Isles, and it's always a pleasure to feature facts and viewpoints on the world of sports. This week is no different. Hope all of you are safe, healthy, and blessed, all of you and your family members. My pleasure to have one of the great individuals in sports media, and he has definitely paid his dues for sure. He started with the Akron Beacon Journal. Then he went on to the New York Times as an NBA writer. Then he was with ESPN for many years as a writer and analyst, television personality. And now he's with Fox Sports since 2016 as an NBA analyst and an on-air personality, co-hosting a great radio show, very funny radio show with another great writer, Rob Parker, called The Odd Couple. And he is also, too, he's done great things for his community, founder and president of the K.I.N.G movement, knowledge, inspiration, and nurture through God, propelling Black males through faith, spirituality, education, and community. It's my pleasure to introduce a friend of mine. I'm honored to have him as a friend, Mr. Chris Broussard. How you doing, sir?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm great, sir. Everything is well. And there's so much to talk about, you know, the title of the show,
Yeah.
So much to talk about indeed. But I want to first say my prayers and condolences go out to you and your family. So sorry for the loss of your father-in-law. Condolences.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, tough times for people, but we got to keep the faith and stay strong.
Yes, absolutely, sir. No question about that. And now, speaking of keeping the faith, the National Basketball Association is keeping the faith of continuing the 2019-2020 season. Will it happen, and should it happen?
Man, I mean, I don't think there's a person on earth who can answer those questions. You know, I'm just trying to listen to the experts, the doctors, and the epidemiologists. But I do know this from talking to people around the league. They want to make it happen. I know there was a story out recently about some owners and agents not wanting the season to happen. And those are probably there probably are some people like that, probably from the bad teams, you know, the teams that are out of it, out of the playoff hunt. And I understand why they may feel like, why should we play 2 weeks, you know, when risk getting our players injured to play for 2 weeks when we're out of the playoff race, or even a bad team or lower rung playoff team may feel the same way. So I do think maybe some of the owners and people from some of the teams that are struggling might not really want to finish the season. It will be without fans, at least initially. Mm-hmm. And so that cuts down on some of the revenue. But from people I've talked to, whether it's in the league office or players or executives, and agents, they want to play the season because one is money, but the other reason is closure. Mm-hmm. You know, if you just let this season go, it's like the previous 4 or 5 months of basketball never occurred.
And it's just like the 94 baseball season when Maris's record could have been broken, or if the Montreal Expos would have won the World Series, or the Yankees would have, you know. So, yeah, same thing.
Yep. So, yeah, I think they're very motivated to play the season, but we'll see if they're able to.
Yes, yes, indeed. Here with Chris Broussard, Fox Sports NBA analyst and on-air personality, co-host of The Odd Couple with Rob Parker on Fox Sports Radio. So, Chris, now I want this. Wow, Isiah and Michael Jordan. You know, competitive people. When competitive people they never get rid of a grudge, for sure. I mean, and those are two of the greatest competitors in NBA history. Isiah said that he ranks Jordan 4th. Behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and then he ranks Michael Jordan as players he's played against. Does he have a legit opinion on that?
I think Michael Jordan's the greatest player ever, not just during Isiah Thomas's era. But I get where Isiah would say that because number one, he may be upset. You know, he may just be like, all right, man, this dude probably kept me off the dream team. He called me the expletive on The Last Dance.
Yep.
So no, you're not even the second best. You're not even the third best. You're the fourth best player I played. But maybe Isiah really means it because let's face it, he beat Jordan plenty of times.
That's right.
And Jordan came into the league after him. So a lot of times when somebody comes in younger than you, you're looking at them like, yeah, this is the little cat trying to come up. And, you don't have that same level of awe that other people may have, because you're looking at him as kind of a little brother. And then you put on top of that they consistently beat the Bulls 3 straight years. So he may be serious. He may really mean that. One of the lower points on the court for Isiah Thomas was in Game 5, I believe it was 1987, when they had a chance to go up 3-2 on the Celtics. Right. And he threw away an inbounds pass that was stolen by Larry Bird. So, Larry Bird,
and then DJ with the layup,
a tremendous player, yeah. And so he may, Magic obviously has success against Isiah. And I know he really reveres Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And so I'm not surprised at all.
Who doesn't?
He put Kareem. Well, Kareem, I think, is severely underrated.
Absolutely.
By most people, underappreciated. But Isiah, I know in conversations with him, he loves Kareem and thinks he was a phenomenal player. So I'm not totally shocked. Again, I don't agree, but it might be a little personal angst up in there too. Recently, to Isiah's chagrin, because we've talked about it many times, I recently moved Steph Curry ahead of Isiah.
Oh no, Chris!
And here's why. First of all, they're the only 2 small players to lead many dynasties, if you will, or if you want to call them dynasties, whatever. Gus Williams, who led Seattle to the championship in 1979, he'd be the only other small player to ever lead a team to a championship.
Him and DJ in that backcourt. Yep.
Yeah. And that team was very much balanced. With DJ, as you mentioned, Jack Sigma, some other players.
Downtown Freddie.
It wasn't as much Gus's team as the Pistons were Isiah's team, or the Warriors when they won their first championship was Steph's team. But I put Steph ahead of Isiah because he's just changed the game, man. And, there are very few players you can name and say they changed the game. And Steph Curry is one of the few. Now, Isaiah's told me he kind of changed it as the small point guard, handling the rock a lot, leading your team, scoring a lot, but also getting assists, which is true, but I think there were a few precursors to him. Like Tiny Archibald was very similar to Isiah. He didn't have the longevity that Isiah had. Right. And so he just was hurt. So he really only had 4 or 5 prime years, Tiny Archibald. And so, but yeah, Steph, man, come on. He changed the game. It's as simple as that. He's the best shooter we've ever seen in NBA history. And it's arguable because Isiah Thomas is phenomenal. But I put Steph ahead of him.
And I love how Isiah changed again. Because remember, Isiah was, you know what I mean? Like flashy when he came in. And the Pistons, remember, they set that all-time record, 186-184 over the Nuggets. They were able to run a gun. And then Isiah totally did a metamorphosis, knowing what he had to do to be a champion, So it's they're both great players, for sure. No question about that. Yes, indeed. So while talking with Chris Broussard, a Fox Sports NBA analyst, as well as on-air personality, on So Much to Talk About. My name is Nabaté Isles. So, Chris, now, LeBron, Durant, Giannis, Kawhi, how would they have fared in the 80s and 90s?
Oh, man, gosh. They would have been phenomenal,
Okay.
They would – look, the superstars of every era – this is my rule. The superstars of every era would be stars, at least, in any era. Okay, so if you were a superstar in an era, then I think we could put you in any era and you'd be a star. And so now, look, when you compare eras, it's very difficult because of the way the game's changed and also the advancement. So a lot of people look at Bob Cousy and say he wouldn't be anything today. You know, he'd be getting killed. Well, if you took Bob Cousy as he was in the 50s and 60s, then and dropped him into today's NBA, yeah, he probably would struggle.
Exactly.
But give Bob Cousy the benefit of charter flights, better sneakers,
thank you,
better nutrition,
and
year-round play, weight training. He'd be Steve Nash, you know, and Bill Russell. If you took Bill Russell as he was and dropped him in, he might struggle. Give him all those advantages, and I think Bill Russell would still be a phenomenal player and a star. So those guys would be great. I think that they would adjust to the game back then. I think they'd finish better with contact, you know, because they'd be used to it. They'd have to get used to it. Just like I think if you took a Michael Jordan or an Isiah Thomas and put them in today's game, they would be much better three-point shooters because they would work on it more and they would shoot it more. And so the guys you mentioned, I mean, my goodness, Durant back then, you didn't have 7-footers handling the rock like he does and shooting it like he does. LeBron, I mean, LeBron's the size of Karl Malone with all his perimeter skills and handle and everything. So those guys would be tremendous if you put him back there.
And people question a lot of the haters, a lot of LeBron haters, especially with the Last Dance documentary really resonating right now in pop culture and sports culture. But a lot of people, they have a problem with LeBron saying his mentality, he didn't have that killer instinct. What is your take to that about the criticism of LeBron's mentality and the fact that he wouldn't be that killer? Dennis Rodman even said something saying that Pip and him would lock him up if they played against him.
Well, nobody would lock up LeBron James.
Right.
I mean, you might guard him better than somebody else. And Rodman and Pippen were tremendous defenders who would guard him as well as anybody. But you're not locking up LeBron James. He's still getting whatever he wants. He's still getting his 30 and 7 and 7, which is what he does. So, but those were great defenders that would make it tougher on him than your average guy for sure. Yeah, look, it's a spectrum. Do I think LeBron has the killer competitiveness that Jordan and Kobe have? No. But do I think he has a killer instinct? Yes. It's just not to the level that theirs is. If theirs is at a 10, his might be at an 8 or a 9, you know? And so, and then there's other players way down at the 2-3 level, you know? So, to say LeBron isn't as much of a killer as Jordan isn't to say he doesn't have a killer instinct. But it's interesting because most media members, including myself, we rank LeBron ahead of Kobe Bryant. Like I have LeBron as the second best player of all time to Jordan. But when most ex-players that I've spoken to who've played against both, most of them put Kobe ahead of LeBron.
Why is that? I wonder. Yeah.
Well, I was talking to one the other day, and he said, look, obviously they're both great. You're nitpicking. But he said, LeBron, he said, I never feared LeBron. He's like, I know LeBron's going to come out and play well and outplay you and, you know, get his and all that. But you didn't fear him. Like, it's not going to be painful. Whereas when you play Kobe, Kobe is going for your throat. You know Kobe's going for your neck. And Kobe's going to be in attack mode all game long. And so it really, and said to the player, I said, it sounds like the difference between fighting, if you can picture them at the same weight, fighting a Mike Tyson versus a Floyd Mayweather. You know Floyd's going to beat you, but it ain't going to be painful. He ain't going to knock you out. He's not going to hurt you. He's not going to beat you up. He's going to outclass you, beat you, and all that. But he's not going to knock you out. Whereas Tyson, it's a different level of fear with Mike Tyson because or Deontay Wilder when he was at his best. They will knock you out and hurt you. And that's what guys have kind of said is the difference between LeBron and Kobe. These are guys that have faced them. LeBron, you know, he ain't going at you every play to score on you. He might pass it, you know. He's going to get other guys involved.
And outthink you.
Where Kobe's coming for you. Yeah. And so I've said it, I'll put it this way, like Kobe, you know, LeBron is great friends with Dwayne Wade. So I felt like when LeBron was in Cleveland and Wade was in Miami, that when they played each other, I felt like, yeah, LeBron, of course, wanted to win. I felt like LeBron wanted to have a great game. Let's say he gets 34 and his 8 and 8 or whatever, but he wants Wade to get 28. He wants to beat you, but you got your 28. You know, you my boy. You know, I want you to have a good game. Whereas Kobe's looking at it like, I want to beat you. I want to have 40, and I want you to have 10. Like, I want to shut you down. You know what I'm saying? And that's just the mentality. And so I think that's the difference, and that's what a lot of players have pointed out to me.
What's your take on the whole hysteria around The Last Dance?
Overall, I think it's phenomenal. Whether I'm surprised or not, it's just put together really well. I think it's very well done. And I think what I love about it is that it's exposing a whole nother generation of fans to the greatness of Michael Jordan. Like, they knew, obviously, they hear guys like myself talking about how great he was. They can see the highlights on YouTube. They still sporting the sneakers. You know, they know the myth and seeing some film here and there. But this is really telling you the whole story to some degree. It's not going to go into the gambling. It's not going to go into Atlantic City. It's not going to go into his father's death. It's not going to go into whether or not he was, you know, the league told him he had to step away for a year and a half or that was really he just wanted to play baseball. It's not going to go into all that most likely. But as far as the basketball stuff, I think it's great for this generation to see. And to your point, I think a lot of people are looking at, they're comparing Jordan to today's players, and they're saying things like low management. What? Like, you know, there's, you know, so they're I think it's great. And look, the pandemic has helped it. I have never seen something like this just captivate an entire sports world. But a lot of that's because of the pandemic, and we don't have, you know, anything else going on, so we're focused on that. But I just think it's tremendous. I'm enjoying it. In fact, somebody sent me the whole 10-part series like last week.
Oh, nice.
And, you know, they wanted me to watch it beforehand, but I was like, you know what? I'm enjoying watching it every Sunday night. You know, I'm looking forward to it. So I don't want to spoil. I don't want to watch it all in 2 days or 1 day or, you know, a week or whatever. I want to enjoy it as it's being put out there and then talk about it and stuff. So I haven't watched the whole thing yet. But I think it's tremendous.
Wow, and that's true, because it's just like, you know, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, watching those sitcoms or watching your drama shows, it's once a week. You know, not like now with Netflix and Amazon Prime.
It is. That's how I grew up, so I'm cool with it.
Exactly. Well, here with Chris Broussard, Fox Sports NBA analyst and on-air personality. And speaking of your on-air things that you're doing, I mean, you're on Undisputed. You're on also you know, the Herd, and yes, all the First Things First, yes, and all these great shows. Now, Chris, you and Rob Parker, of course, you came up. I mean, you both are like, you paid your dues in being able to write the great stories and write the great columns and write books and everything. So talk about how the chemistry of you and Rob Parker really even developed more with you being the odd couple, a la Walter Klugman and Tony Randall.
And I'm Walter Klugman, of course. But
Tony Randall was a Mac, though. You know, he married a woman 50 years younger than him, you know?
Yeah, right. You know, the chemistry, it's just natural. You know, it's nothing that we worked on or work on. It's just natural. And there is I tell younger people in TV and radio, there is a big it factor, and you either have it or you don't factor. You know, and whether you're talking about chemistry, charisma, likability, whatever, it's not. There are people that are technically sound They're articulate. They do everything right.
Yep.
But they're not drawing you in. They don't have that it factor.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are those who aren't, like Charles Barkley's the greatest, he's won Emmys, his sports broadcasting is tremendous. He's not technically sound or anything, but it's just an it factor about him. Mm-hmm. Kenny Smith and, the chemistry they have on that set, it's just there. And so with Rob and I, it's just kind of there. It's funny how it was discovered because I was doing a podcast. I was hosting a podcast at the time, In the Zone, when I first got to Fox.
Okay.
And I had several people on, athletes and some of our colleagues from Fox Sports and other people. Mm-hmm. And I had Rob on. And it was good. And, it was fine. I didn't really think much of it. It was fine. And Don Martin, who's one of the executives, the lead executives over at Fox Sports Radio, he saw it and he loved it. He was like, man, I got to get you guys together on radio. Why haven't people put you together on radio? And I was like, whatever. So he put us together. We started doing weekends and it went well. And then they decided, once it was going well on weekends, they could make it a daily show. And so that's what it's become. But, I think part of it is that, Rob and I have a lot of respect for each other and we like each other. We're friends. We've known each other for almost 30 years.
That's right.
And also, Rob, so we can go at each other without it being personal, without it, leading to us not liking each other and all that stuff. And so, and I think I say Rob, Rob's takes are, a lot of them are out there. He makes strong takes. I say they're takes that necessitate a pushback. And so I'm willing to push back on him. So I think that dynamic is really what draws people in. If you have somebody with Rob that won't push back at some of his takes, it won't be as good. If you have somebody with me that doesn't make those, really out there takes or outlandish takes, it might not work as well. So I think that's part of what makes the Odd Couple work.
What is your take on opportunities for young Black broadcasters, especially broadcasters, journalists, writers? Like, how do you see the industry being able to be more diverse? Because there's still some issues here and there, but do you think there's progress? And what would your advice be to a young journalist coming up on how he or she could be able to get into the game?
Well, it's such a competitive business. And I don't know what the numbers are. We're only 12, 13% of the population. So we should be at least that percentage of the broadcasting world in front of the camera. Mm-hmm. And in sports, you could certainly argue we should be more because African Americans dominate sport, certainly football and basketball.
Exactly.
But I don't know what the numbers are. They look, when you look at the personalities on television, we're talking about sports, you certainly see plenty of African Americans. You want to make sure that all of the African Americans aren't ex-athletes.
Right.
So right. You have, you want to make sure you're giving African Americans who work their way up as journalists or anchors or broadcasters, just like non-African Americans are getting that shot. But I think the place that it most needs to be increased and improved is behind the scenes, behind the cameras, in the offices, those who are making decisions. And there are some, obviously I worked at ESPN and there were some African Americans and Fox, but that's where the diversity, from what I see just with my eyes, that's where the diversity most needs to take place.
Yep.
Because I do see you're getting, at least in sports, there's a good number of African Americans in front of the camera, but it's a competitive business. And so what I would say to the young African Americans who want to enter the field is be the best you can. Be the best you can. Do not rest on your laurels. Don't have a sense of entitlement. Don't think anybody owes you anything. Even if they do owe you anything, don't have that attitude because they might not give it to you.
That's
and
right.
if you get it, that's gravy and that's great. But your attitude has to be, I'm going out to outwork everybody, be better than everybody, make sure my stuff is tight, get the best interviews. I'm solid, I'm sharp in front of the camera. I know my information, I know the game, and just dot all your I's and cross all your T's. And then, that's your best shot at getting in. But I think if we get more African Americans in the decision-making roles, then, that's a better for us to get hired. Because look, whether
Exactly.
it's this business or every business, there is a huge who you know, not what you know factor. And who you know is huge in this business. And because of the history of this country, we're not always in the, no, so to speak. You see that in the NFL. Why aren't they hiring? It's ridiculous that so few African Americans are getting head coaching jobs.
Oh, man.
But that's the owner, that's the front office going with who they know, going with who they're comfortable with. And some of that's human nature, and that's why you need things that work against that and can make sure people have equal opportunities. But that's a prime example of what's happening and how who is very important. So we need to get in those positions. And those of us who are in those positions need to push for other African Americans and use our influence to help make sure things are getting more and more diverse.
That's for sure. And one more question, King. What's going on with King with your organization?
King is going well. Thank you for asking. It's a men's movement, national men's movement, and we're just trying to help brothers become the best that they can be. The best husbands, the best fathers, the best leaders, citizens, and role models that they can be. Some brothers aren't fathers and husbands, which is fine. And so it's going well. We had our national conference. We had to cancel it, obviously. It was in Charlotte, March
27th to 29th.
Yeah.
Right.
But next year, it's going to be in Brooklyn at the Christian Cultural Center.
Yes.
March 19th through the 21st. So we're looking forward to it, man.
Yes, indeed. Well, Chris Broussard, I appreciate you. I thank you for King because it's helped me. I mean, the Daniel fast, I'm always on that every January, and it's a beautiful thing, and the calls that you do as well every Thursday too at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time.
That's right. And we actually, for the month of May, we're gonna make those Zoom calls.
Okay.
So we'll try that out and see how that works. But
most definitely.
Yeah. So, but thank you for getting on. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Chris Broussard, for joining me on So Much to Talk About. Thank you all for watching. See you all next week. Be safe, be healthy, be blessed. Bye-bye, everybody.